You got a program already mapped out
He
for
and I were both out doing...
Press will draw 100 bonus numbers in November. That's 20 every Saturday for 5 weeks. If your ticket matches one of those numbers, you'll win a new Ford Taurus LX.
Pacific Express, it's your ticket to ride.
Wendy's Big Classic Sweepstakes. Over $4 million in prizes can be won. Cars, videos, big classics. There's a prize hidden on every car.
No, this isn't Shakespeare. This is a big contest. Watch. Now, during Wendy's Big Classic Sweepstakes, you can win big classics, a prize on every card. That's the good stuff. Hold it up high. Love you. Axel.
Now, during Wendy's Big Classic Sweepstakes, you can win over $4 million.
Love it. It's a classic. It's a classic.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
What, Spirit?
Gaze upon your future.
Oh, Spirit, tell me I didn't buy all those gifts.
You did?
Oh, it's a nightmare.
But you saved at Canadian Tire.
All those gifts at one store? Where to now?
The Cratchits.
Drop me off at Canadian Tire first. Figure of speech! Ebenezer, you look like you've seen a ghost. Canadian Tire let you give like Santa.
And save like Scrooge.
Our weather forecast calls for unsettled conditions across the province. The satellite photo from this afternoon shows another frontal system moving from the northwest, spreading more showers and rain and snow through the interior. The south coast, a system of dry air moving in, resulting in clearing skies for tomorrow. The forecast beginning in the far north, clear with lows of -20 and highs of only -16. For the interior, cloudy with a few showers, lows around -4 and highs of 10. And for those of us on the south coast, we can look forward to sunny with cloudy periods, lows of 2 and highs of 8 degrees. That's the early news. Stay tuned for Webster.
Good evening. You have probably made up your mind, no matter where you live in British Columbia, who would be the better mayor for the city of Vancouver. I'm going to give you a chance tonight to change your mind. But first, Steve with a rundown.
Showdown in the Okanagan. Municipal employees are striking for a familiar cause, a guarantee that the employer won't contract out union jobs. Even the Premier couldn't break the 4-month deadlock. In the studio with Webster, Mike Dumler of the Canadian Union of Public Employees. But first, the leading contenders in Vancouver's mayoralty race are entering the home stretch. Will it be veteran Harry Rankin for Cope or Gordon Campbell of the NPA? They're up first with Webster.
And first, a little hyperbole. Are you, the citizens of Vancouver, going to choose the socialist, or are you going to choose the developer? Are you going to choose the man who obviously doesn't like the government of Victoria, Harry Rankin, or are you going to choose the man who probably loves the government of Victoria, Gordon Campbell? But the way I'm going to start this tonight, and it's going to be a very sedate, quiet, orderly program, is by asking Harry Rankin, whom I've known for 40 years, what are you going to do that's going to be different at Vancouver City Hall, and what, in your mind, simply put, are the key issues in this election?
I probably am not going to raise extraordinary new issues in Vancouver. I think in the areas of the residential community, people want quiet enjoyment of their premises. The ideal being a single-family neighborhood. They don't want the intrusion of traffic. They don't want to have hookers in their neighborhood. They don't want to have noise or large stores that impinge on their neighborhood. They want, of course, the quietness of Surrey in the urban development of Vancouver.
Let me sum it up. You're therefore going to be the mild-mannered, diplomatic mayor of Vancouver who will hide his political leanings and give us a quiescent administration as the city now stands.
I could have summed it up much shorter than that if you'd let me answer the question.
Answer it again.
But you see, you didn't let me finish answering the question. I am going to try to do what I can to facilitate those things happening. And obviously, in a city like Vancouver, that is a real big challenge.
Now, how dare you challenge a man of such calm diplomacy and whatnot? Is there anything you can offer that would be better than what Harry's going to do? Quiet, residential, one-family neighborhoods, clean up the hookers?
Well, certainly I am going to make sure that we preserve our single-family neighborhoods. I've said that all along. I've said that since I was on council. I believe we have to concentrate more effort on that than we have in the past. We have to have neighborhood zoning that, in fact, does those things that Alderman Rankin is talking about. I believe that what we have to do in the city now is we have to look to the future. We have to build on the successes that we've had this year. We have to build on the service industries that we've developed in Vancouver and the talents that people have. And we have to enlist as many people as possible in the government to come up with solutions so we can get on with the job.
Okay, let me put it a little more succinctly. He's going to be a hands-on mayor, the system established. He's going to be a hands-off mayor, and you're going to be a hands-on mayor. You're going to get in there and shake up that city hall at last.
I'm certainly going to be a hands-on mayor, and I'm certainly going to try and lead a council that provides new direction for the city staff, yes.
That's right, and you won't necessarily go the whole totally union way that Harry's absolutely dedicated to.
I don't think that's the issue. The issue is how are we going to get the governments to work together, how are we going to get people to work together, and how are we going to build on our successes?
Well, just let me deal with that question. The first motion by Alderman Campbell to contract out was stifled a little bit by May Brown, who knew a little bit about the past history of the bakers.
Contracting out what?
Everything. And so she said, well, now let's not study the garbage question because, you know, we had a few goes at that and the people of Vancouver liked the service they were getting. So what was happening then, we just have the overview of what's happening in the Okanagan. Try and see how much cheaper we can do it in terms of trying to affect the economies at the level of the working man. That's what Alderman Campbell has put forward, but he backed away to some extent when May Brown said, look, be a little careful of this.
Let's put that quite clearly. He says you're in favor of contracting out whatever you can to reduce the city costs, and he is not in favor of contracting out. He'll keep it all in the hands of the union, as vis-a-vis your decision the other day to spend more money on recycling newspapers, putting some little volunteer groups out of material for their operations.
Well, first of all, let me correct the history. The history was I put a motion before council that was seconded by Alderman Brown that said we wanted to get the best value for our tax dollar. I still believe that. I believe that our city staff should be always looking for places that we can save money and that we can, in fact, get a better value for our dollar. I'm been consistent in that regard.
No question.
You disagree on this,
no, I
obviously.
do not. You get the best value for your dollar. But, you know, we've gone through this. Baker was going to cut 1,000 jobs. Alderman, at that time, mayoralty candidate Van der Zam was going to cut down the jobs if he got into the place. They've all had that in mind. I say, by all means, get the best value for your dollar, but don't do it under the guise of contracting out and ending up with 3 and 4 month strikes and the city in chaos. That's what I say.
Would you put the city in chaos? Is that what he's trying to tell us?
No, I would not put the city in chaos, and I have not suggested that we are going to lay off staff. I have not voted to lay off staff, and I am not intending to vote to lay off staff. I am intending to concentrate the efforts of our civic staff in areas that are important. I think that government's got to make some choices, and we've got to get them to work properly.
Harry would go union contracts all the way, and you wouldn't necessarily.
We
now,
have,
that's not bad.
No, we
That's
have a
correct.
fair wage policy in effect, which is not union contracts all the way. We have said that when a contractor bids, he isn't going to be able to make millions to put into his pocket by exploiting people and cutting their wages down. The fair wage policy means that you vote on, you put your bid in on a contract which has a floor as far as wages is concerned, not union contract.
Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with our fair wage policy. I believe that people should be paid fair wages. Our policy right now, we in fact pay outside, we require outside contractors who are bidding on city work to pay more than we require our own staff to pay for the same work.
That's
it's
not
the
true.
C.U.P.E 1004 wage rate plus 28%. Our staff's recommendation, if we wanted to have a level, fair system, was the C.U.P.E 1004 plus 14%. They decided for 28%.
No, he's wrong. He has some.
Right.
No, he has a
they are right,
habit
Jack. Just
of
have to
being
look 'em up.
incorrect in his figures on a number of occasions over the period. The rate of wages that are to be paid is the same as what a union C.U.P.E member would be getting. In the industrial field, that's far below the, not far, substantially below the union wage.
Let's leave that. What, you're both agreed in the ward system, are you?
I'm agreed on the word system.
You agreed in the ward system?
I am agreed on the ward system.
But you think
His
the social credit
position,
government would gerrymander the boundaries?
I know by their history, and so does everybody else. But that's another matter that we can get into. The other disagreement is the question of 60% to change the structure, which Alderman Campbell's position. My position is that 50%. You're not changing the fundamental charter of the City of Vancouver, you are simply saying we will divide the city into a number of areas that conform to the boundaries of neighborhoods.
But anyway,
and 50% vote will change it so that you don't have 50 people running for alderman. You have one in each neighborhood of each party and each group.
Is that fair enough?
I can never tell what Alderman Rankin started to say by the time he's finished.
Well, that's your problem. You probably have a little trouble that way, and that's one of the problems that the mayor has to get over.
So never mind. What about shopping hours? You're in a complete dichotomy in shopping hours, are you not?
Yes, I believe we should rescind the store closing bylaw.
Wide open shopping.
Yes.
And any of these big mega stores that are appearing in the valley and elsewhere?
I believe we should have a conditional use zoning in our industrial areas that would allow mega markets, that would give us an 18% saving in our food costs in Vancouver.
You're against that?
And I am against that, and it will not give us an 18% saving in our food products. When his mentor, Mayor Phillips, was in power, he was the one that started in on the question of the do-it-yourself gas stations. And we were going to save tons of money. If you look at those gas stations today in Vancouver, which in Richmond are still service stations, not self-serve stations, the differences there and the differences in gas here are negligible. And you can end up running around maybe getting a cent or otherwise. Once they gain the monopoly of wiping out the small business, which is the base of our economy, then up go the prices because they have a monopoly.
Well, Jack,
it's simple as that.
We constantly get history lessons. We constantly hear what Phillips did. We hear what Van der Zam said. We hear what Baker said. What I'm saying is that the facts are today, if you go to Statistics Canada, if you look at their 100-item shopping basket, it costs 18% less to buy that same basket in North Vancouver.
You're for the big stores and you're not for the big stores.
No, wait a minute.
Let me put something else to you.
Temporarily, you're 18%. And when we talk about history,
it wasn't temporary in
people
Saskatoon.
who don't regard history are doomed to live it over again. And when he wants to get some real authority to do things, he said, I was Mayor Phillips' secretary. I really ran the program, and Phillips carried it out. Now, you can't have it both ways,
Just a minute.
Never said that.
One question before I go to the phones. The mayor's job, I'm reliably informed, is 1/3 symbolic, isn't it? It's very important that we have a cool diplomat as mayor of Vancouver. Would you be a cool diplomat?
I believe I'd be a good representative for the city of
Would
Vancouver.
you be
all
good
over.
down barracking or harassing the U.S. Navy ships in port as the mayor of Vancouver, which is your normal political attitude?
My normal attitude is to be doing the things that are necessary. Today I was at a daycare center, which is also symbolic in some ways, and I have at least this. I give everybody a chance at symbolism, not just the big shots.
But you're equally brutal to anybody whose symbolism you don't like.
No, that's not true. I am vigorous in terms of making sure that I respect the city's rights as against a developer that wants to crowd in and just speak only of money and not of the social things.
I find you both guilty of improper campaigning, you with your city crests on your stuff, and you with your meetings in the Manitoba workyard. So that's been wiped out.
Well, just forget
Am
that.
I not correct in that?
No, you're not correct on that. In the Manitoba workyards, Bruce York went there before work this morning. In the symbolism of the city, and let me just put something else.
Keep it short.
Mr. Bennett, Commissioner Bennett, in league with May Brown, Marguerite Ford, Mr. Campbell, got out at a tree planting ceremony in West Broadway, showing that they were the ones that got this program going.
Oh, that's too
just a minute, with Dennis Gray Grant, and excluded everybody else because they wanted to get a little edge for him.
The NPA.
And people do that.
You were guilty of city
people
crests. You were guilty of invading the Manitoba workyard.
No, we didn't.
Phone calls after the break.
Our Manitoba yards, and it was before work.
He wants to, don't you? You know, now the Expo, which was a magnificent success and which Harry opposed, is over.
Yes.
It was a success, wasn't it, Harry? Wasn't it?
I think that for $1 billion, we had a damn
I was a
party.
success. Are you going to, is the new mayor going to allow them to rip out all these pilings that created the waterfront in on the BC Place site?
I would hope that we're not going to be allowing
That's what the
that.
contract says, isn't it?
The contract says that, but I believe that if we sit down and work with BC Place, those 30-year pilings can be saved.
I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of differences in how it's designed.
You'd agreed in that?
We're going to have to get advice on what.
But you're
30
both
years
agreed on the kind of housing and development in BC Place, aren't you?
No, we're not.
No, we're not agreed upon it. We
agreed
have
with that
some
at all.
general ideas at this point that are the same.
Let's go to the phones. I'm not very successful in irritating you. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, you, sir.
Yes, there was an article yesterday in the Vancouver Sun that the city of Vancouver was going to spend $350,000 to study the aspect of garbage men picking up newspapers from...
Okay, I raised that partially. There was a story in the Sun last night, and I got a phone call today from downtown saying that you're going to spend city money to take the bread and butter out of little groups that collect for ID Club and the Boy Scouts that collect newspapers. True or false?
Well, we have a responsibility with the GVRD to collect and recycle a great deal of garbage. And
How
so we
much
have
city
decided
money?
it's, I believe it's $135,000 in the first year.
You agree with this too?
I agree with the recycling. I've been on the Solid Waste Committee of the Regional District for a number of years. The conclusion is that we've got to stop putting massive amounts of garbage into the dump.
What about the little groups that sell the papers?
The little
There's
groups
lots
can
of
still
paper
get the papers.
over to collect the paper.
And in
There's
fact,
lots
one of the
areas.
things that came up is often when you have a regular program that they in fact come before the regular program and pick up the papers and they get extra money.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have several questions. I'll ask the questions and hang up. One of the first questions is, how do the gentlemen, both candidates, feel about these illegal suites? In the area I'm at, in the Point Grey, UBC area, we have a lot
illegal
of them.
suites.
And we've complained in the past, and nothing's ever been done about them, unfortunately.
What's your next question?
Okay, the next question is many houses. And then the next question is illegal development. In this area, for instance, we had 2 lots subdivided into 3 lots, which weren't supposed to happen. They were subdivided into 30-foot lots. Then height housing went in, 35 feet high. They took away the view of just about...
Okay, that's your second point. What's your third point?
Well, the third point is how do these gentlemen stand? I mean, where do they stand as far as what you call neighborhood busting goes on, where developers come in and they just take over and they buy up some property, and it's to hell with the rest of them.
Okay, I've got it. First of all, the illegal suites. What's the score on that?
The score on that is that the city has a bylaw right now, and we should be enforcing it. We have enforced it on complaint in the past. We should continue that. We have just changed the bylaw. We are in the process of changing it. We're going to a public hearing to eliminate what they call secondary kitchens or summer kitchens, which will solve a great deal of that problem for the future.
Get them back to RS1 areas.
RS1 neighborhoods, I believe, should be protected. I think they're the most valuable asset that we have in Vancouver, and our whole neighborhood protection plan is based on that.
Harry?
No question. There are a lot of illegal suites that are in place right now. Don't forget, you inherit history, and you can't undo it. So, in fact, we are studying the city as a whole. Some areas where there are massive numbers of illegal suites, and we're doing one at the 29th Avenue Station area, we will find that maybe the basis of 60–70% of the people will want it. Certain areas do not want it.
Does that mean you wipe out the illegal suites where the neighborhood wants them wiped out?
Well, if we get into a
enforce
neighborhood...
them when the neighborhood wants them enforced,
That's right.
yes.
On an enforcement
That's exactly
basis
what you do.
and different neighborhoods. The mini houses are a minor matter. We inherited that as well. There are lots that are just so wide. We have restricted, the normal thing is 10% on each side. On these tiny lots, we've increased or decreased the amount of housing that you can put on site. You cannot wipe out a $50,000, $60,000 equity or more in somebody's property because the courts wouldn't allow that.
Are you agreed with him on this?
On the mini lots, yes, but the other question was the question of the developers coming in and buying up neighborhoods and thrusting things into them. I believe that neighborhoods have to decide what they want. I believe, for example, when we put the medium density into the single-family neighborhoods in Collingwood, we should not have done that. The neighborhood was opposed to that, and we should have gone along with the neighborhood. I went along with the neighborhood in that case. Alderman Rankin opposed them.
He opposed it.
No, it was
You either
condominium.
opposed
It
it or
was
you didn't
condominium house. He's wrong about the neighborhood. The zoning allowed for what was there, and we allowed cooperative housings to go in it. That was that strip along Kingsway. Had a long public hearing on it.
We had a rezoning because the zoning wasn't there. That's why you have rezoning hearings.
The rezoning was there because before that there were auto courts and junk. You remember the kind of thing that was along there?
Before that, medium density was not allowed in that neighborhood,
had to
Harry.
have that done by a public hearing, and it was done by a public hearing. After the public hearing, the argument was then what you put on the site.
And the
Go
neighborhood
ahead,
was
please.
unanimously opposed to it.
The neighborhood unanimously opposed to it. Tell me. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
That's you.
Yes, I'm a little bit concerned about Mr. Campbell's history as a developer, or background as a developer. I'd like to know precisely, because it hasn't really been covered in the media, exactly what kind of work do you do now as a developer, and what guarantees do you have that if you do become mayor, your development background and associations will not affect the decisions that have to be made? Thank you.
I think that's a fair question, and I'm glad to be able to answer it. As a developer, as my own small company, I built 2 hotels. One was across the street from the stadium, the other is down at the foot of Oak Street. Both of those were done between 1981 and 1986. In June of 86, I left my company, but I want to say one thing about this whole development issue. I think it's important that people understand what is involved in development. They understand the opportunities that we can take, and the role of the City Council is to make sure that we are clear in our objectives so that we can focus everyone's energy and resources to attain them.
Have you got any conflicts, Harry?
I don't think so. I think that when you talk of conflicts, you talk of what you perceive. I think more importantly, what do the people out there perceive of you? That's the real issue, not
Some
what
of them
you
think you're old Uncle Harry, and some of them think you've got horns coming out of your forehead.
That's right, and I think that that perception is something that's there, and you have these discussions to see if you can dispel them or answer specific questions, and that's how you try to do it.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes, my observation, an observation and a question. The observation is we used to have tremendous water in this town. Somebody's dumping all this chlorine into it, and it's making it undrinkable.
Oh, just a minute. Is the Vancouver water undrinkable?
No, let me answer that. We were putting 3 parts per million of chlorine in at the outtake, you know, where the water comes into the city. The medical health officer said we've got to put in some booster stations down because huge pipes coming in. We keep it to 3%. We get wash-ins from mud and everything else. You've got to deal with water when you've got millions of people.
Water Board does that, doesn't it?
Well, we do it through the regional district.
Yeah, well, that's not an issue.
Well, it is to some people,
No,
and I
I
was trying to answer it. 3 parts per million.
Go ahead, please.
Not very heavy.
Yes, hello?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, hello. I want to know what their stand is on the IndyCar type racing in Vancouver, and my second question is...
just a minute. IndyCar type racing in Vancouver, is that an issue?
Everything that people
Someone's
ask
brought
is
it
an
up,
issue.
but it's, I think it's been brought up, and it's coming before, it will come before the council as a proposal. and it may,
Indy-type
in fact-
racing?
Yeah. Now, what I'd want to know, I've never been to a race in my life.
I don't
want
wanna
to
know about that.
is there some safety factors required? We get
What we
reports.
want to know is, are there benefits
It's
from it?
not going to make anyone decide which way they're going to vote on November the
I
15th
don't think so.
after the break.
That's right.
I think so.
Got to try and brighten this up a bit. And at least whoever wins, the mayor of the city will be able to travel in the United States.
Yes.
Now that's good. That's good.
Well, and it cuts down half the. That's why the calls are so short tonight. There's the people out there that were phoning in to ask the same question now don't have it anymore.
See how easy it would have been done
And
to
you
do it in
didn't even
June?
have to make an application to cross the border.
Look, when you go down to the Canadian Club and you're sort of one of them, why should you have to go down to the
Are
concert?
you telling me, Harry Rankin, you're finally admitting that as a former treasurer of the Law Society, a scion of the establishment, property owner of a large building in downtown Vancouver, you are in fact a phony and a real member of the establishment?
Yes.
I get invited.
Yes, he's trying to tell
I
you
get
that.
invited once every 2 years to the Canadian Club, and you know, like everybody else, I appreciate
And
it.
then you bumped into the U.S.
Quality-
consul
Quality people.
and got the word that he can cross the border. I don't know if I should take a call from Abbotsford, but it might be brighter than the other calls. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster. I live in Abbotsford now, but I was many years a resident of Vancouver.
Just ask a question.
And I don't have a question. I have a comment to make. I think that Expo #1 did a great thing for Vancouver, and I wonder if Mr. Rankin, if he's elected as mayor, will ever shut up long enough for anybody else to state an opinion.
Excellent question. Will you ever shut up long enough for anyone else to state an opinion?
Well,
Hope springs eternal.
you know what I did? I kept quiet while she made that observation from Clearbrook or Abbotsford.
But you wouldn't have done it in council.
And the fact of the matter is, you know, her observation doesn't really make much difference. She doesn't vote in the civic elections.
Yeah, but people do say that you are wandering on a lot more than you used to.
Well, that's something you've made up.
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, I'd like to ask both candidates about advertising the city as a tourist attraction, if it exists or not, and if they have plans. What are these plans, obviously?
Okay, are you both committed to tourism as the only economic salvation for this depressed province?
It's certainly not the only economic salvation, but it's going to be one of the major areas that we are going to make inroads in creating new jobs throughout the city of Vancouver, and we've taken, I think, some good initiatives, and I was glad to be part of May Brown's group in doing that, putting that together.
It wasn't May Brown's group at all. It was the Economic Development Committee, which I serve on, and which Alderman Pule is the chairman. It's not May Brown's group at all. Well, Alderman Pule is the chairman of the Economic Development Committee, and I voted along with him and Alderman Campbell to enhance the tourist industry. It is the other part of that is jobs in construction, jobs in basic industry.
And service jobs at $4 an hour.
And port jobs, and we want real jobs that produce real incomes as well.
You know, I think that it's important to recognize that sometimes individual members of council do go out and do put in a great deal of effort. May Brown and I spent a lot of time putting together
I'll
the tourism
give you credit
program.
for it.
And the other thing I'd like to say just about this whole service industry business, if we do a good job of developing the service industry, what will happen is the industry, the agricultural sector, the manufacturing sector will follow. I think it's clear to anyone who's getting themselves up to date and knows where jobs are being created that that's the case.
And jobs are going to be created out of our woods, because we'll have the technology. If we don't export it all to the States, instead of exporting raw logs out, we will produce jobs out of the forestry industry.
We're trying to maintain
we will
jobs
produce
there, not create new
jobs
ones.
out of the coal mining industry and the iron ore, which we ship to Japan.
Are you speaking for Van der Zam?
No.
Do you like Van der Zam?
It's not important whether I like him or not.
Yes, it is.
It's important that I deal with them in a practical way.
Can you get on with Van der Zam?
Yes, I have for 20 years at the regional
You can,
district.
of course, because you're on the right side of the political spectrum anyway.
I'm on the correct side of the political spectrum. I'm right in the middle. No, I think that it's clear that I'm in the middle.
Agassi. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say I'm glad that Campbell's running for mayor, and it's about time they get these old cronies out of there. And quite frankly, I think that looks like Rankin's got some horns growing out of his nose, not his head. Thank you.
That's his mustache. I apologize for that.
No, you don't have to. There are a lot of ignorant people anywhere in the world, and you just have to accept that, don't you?
Go ahead, please.
Hello. I just want to say that I'm awfully glad that Campbell is running, because I think that he will represent all of the people, not just the blood-sucking unions.
Is that you, Harry? You represent just the blood-sucking unions?
Well, when you think of it, in this city, the blood-sucking unions are people that work for a living like the people that aren't in the unions.
Go ahead, please.
And if you have a kind of a concept that a man who wants to work and have or a woman, and wants to have a decent living conditions is a bloodsucker, then obviously you don't really know what work is all about.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, hello. I would like to know where the two candidates stand on the question of heritage within the city, and why the city purchased a parcel of land in Mount Pleasant very secretively without any consultation with the neighborhood. I hear talk about the concern for neighborhoods in the area. I'd like some answers from these two people on this question, please.
You take it, God.
Well, first of all, I think that heritage preservation is important, and I'm glad we're finally getting a program together that will allow us to do that. Secondly, the situation in Mount Pleasant was one where, in fact, what we were trying to do as a city was to save some very valuable heritage buildings. We weren't able to save them all. We were able to save one. And the city typically does their property negotiations inside, in camera, so that we're not giving away the ranch to everybody.
Yeah, I think that there's no difference between Alderman Campbell and myself and almost all members of council. You can't negotiate property out in the open, or you simply lose it all. We had to build, that housing is for senior citizens. We are keeping one large house there, and we are combining the best of both worlds to save a property in Mount Pleasant.
It's also for handicapped people.
Go ahead, please. So the man has sort of, like everybody does, they kind of generally state the facts.
This amity is disturbing. Go ahead, please.
No, it's not amity. It's a hard program that you have to deal with the money.
That's you, ma'am.
Yeah, hi. Gentlemen, given that illegal suites are the only low rent available to poor people because welfare only allows $209 a month for a single person, where will these thousands of people go? Will you find them alternative housing before they are evicted?
First of all, they won't be
I trust these people to Rankin, not to Owen. Mr. Rankin has horns because there are antennas that are put out to hear the needs of the people.
Well,
I'll hang up and listen to the answer.
I think the answer shortly is to build more social housing. That is our program for the north side.
Will they be evicted?
They will not be evicted.
Will they
the
be
ones
evicted?
that need homes will not be
they
evicted.
will not be evicted, but we will be enforcing the bylaw on neighborhood complaint. That's
In
what
other
we're
words,
going to do.
if I'm in an illegal suite on a neighborhood complaint and I'm found guilty, I will be a non-conforming use as long as I want to be?
No, as long as your
you will in fact
income
be,
is at a certain
be
point.
evicted. There is a hardship application. I'd just like to correct one misconception that this caller has, and that is that for some reason she believes that these units are cheap. They are not cheap. In fact, we go through a number of them time and time again where people are paying $650 and $700 for a basement suite. That is not the kind of housing that you need to supply. And we can supply housing in the north side of Falls Creek. We can supply a balance that allows families and people to live in the city of Vancouver.
And we've had inadequate programs because our provincial government has never given the support they should have. It's the worst support in Canada for the building of social
You
housing.
think it's going to get any better?
No, but I think we're going to start to do some real negotiating to make sure it does get better.
Is BC Place going to be for the rich only?
No, BC Place is going to be balanced neighborhoods. It's going to be reasonable density development, and it's going to be...
What do you two disagree on, really?
Look, we disagree on lots of stuff.
How about the hookers? You've all failed to do anything about the hookers, and you still have got these disgusting barriers around town.
And I think that the barriers are the most effective way of moving them out of the neighborhoods. We obviously had thoughts, or some people did, that if you pass legislation, you will somehow cure the hooker question, juveniles and otherwise. Again, it's programs in place that deal with those questions, and you've got to do something about the social issues, not only the police issues.
Bill C-49 is a start. We're going to be reviewing that in 1987. We should be making presentations from our police, and we should be sure we have the manpower to police those neighborhoods and make sure they're safe and secure.
And you're never going to be able to do that unless you address the social problems along with the police problems. In the meantime, barriers to move them from strategic, sensitive areas...
You said that already, Harry.
But they've got to be done. You see, you consider that to be nothing.
No, you said it already 2 minutes ago.
If it was in your neighborhood, you'd be much less casual
It's
about
not far from my neighborhood either. And the garbage collection in my neighborhood isn't very good either.
I think the barriers were a good idea. I'm glad
And
I
I've
thought it
got
up
to
when I went to
vote
Mount
this
Pleasant.
time in Vancouver for the first time. And I am
Well,
going
then
to...
use your intelligence.
I am going to vote for... Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. A delightfully pleasant program. Your language is impeccable. Your manners were magnificent.
Thank you very much.
There was a
John.
lack of confrontation. I have failed.
You did an excellent job.
My thanks to Harry Rankin and to Gordon Campbell. And I shall be back. No more words need to be said after the break.
Your job is also good.
On this section of the program, I would welcome telephone calls on any number collect from Kamloops, Kelowna, Penticton, Summerland, Revelstoke, Salmon Arm, Logan Lake, Princeton, Oliver, Osoyoos, Karamias, Thompson, Nicola, and Columbia Shuswap. Because these are the communities affected just now by a C.U.P.E strike lockout, which has been going on for ages and ages and ages, the end of June. And down here, it's a kind of forgotten dispute. With me is Mike Dumler, who is the president of C.U.P.E British Columbia with 30,000 members in the province. Is that correct?
That's correct, Jeff.
One of the most powerful unions in BC, correct?
It could be put that way, yes.
And one of the wealthiest unions in BC, correct?
At one time, yes.
Now, how come you've got the strike and lockout, which has been going on since even before the IWA one? What are all the issues the same in each strike?
Actually, there's only one strike. That's in Penticton. It affects 140 members. There are 1,200 members in total off the job. So that leaves about 1,100 or 1,060 that are actually locked out.
Now, how long has this been going on?
The strike was at the end of June. The lockout came in two parts. 11 of the municipalities and regional districts were locked out around July 14th.
So the moment you struck on whatever issues in Penticton, the Okanagan Mainland Association and other employer bodies locked you out in all these other places?
That one employer body represents the employers in 11 municipalities and 2 regional districts.
So you struck first in Penticton. On what issue?
That was on the issue of contracting out. Just prior to the strike, the mayor in Penticton contracted out the cemetery where a C.U.P.E member had worked for a number of years to his son-in-law. The Peach Bowl, which is the convention center there, was contracted out to golfing buddies of the mayor and the council.
Now, be careful with what you say. I can't necessarily prove what you're telling me, but let's just go over that to see if you can justify it. That the mayor of Penticton there was one C.U.P.E worker working in the cemetery.
That's correct.
And he was laid off.
No, he was given some other job to do in the municipality, the job he had done for 10 or 15 years.
And the cemetery, that's the digging job, the maintenance of the cemetery was given to...
Maintaining the cemetery, yes.
And that's, you're telling me the truth accurately, are you sure?
That's correct. It has not been refuted.
But you're not
telling
you're not telling me that all of that Penticton local went out because of one job in the cemetery.
No, that was a culminating incident. The history of the Penticton local, going back 10 years, they had 300 members. Today, they have 140. A lot of the jobs that gave some interest and some challenge to the civic employees there have been contracted out.
So from 300 down to 140. This is the IWA syndrome, job security syndrome.
That's correct.
But you can't stop technological change or increased efficiency where people are laid off, can you?
We don't try and stop technological change. Our approach to technological change is to work with the employer. We seek fair notice that change is coming about. We look at the impact of that change, retrain employees for other jobs, use attrition. There are a number of ways in which...
But it was in Penticton. Was it Penticton where the employees went down from 300 to 140?
Yeah, but that wasn't the result of technological change.
Over what period?
That's over a 10-year period.
What other services were contracted out?
Waste disposal, waste collection.
You mean garbage?
Garbage, yes.
Garbage disposal, garbage collection. But if the taxpayers can do it cheaper, why shouldn't they?
It's a question of can they do it cheaper. Studies we've seen say that we are as cost-effective and cost-efficient, and the quality of service under municipal workforce is far better than that which you get from...
Waste disposal, garbage collection, what else?
The
contracting out.
Okay, the patching of roads, certain types of maintenance. We had a hot mix crew. There was a...
in other words, they're calling for bids now instead of using pensionable civic employees.
That's correct.
And do you think you can turn back the clock and stop this nowadays?
Well, the proposal we have is not to turn back the clock. We aren't proposing that everything that was ever contracted out be contracted back in. I've got the words of the clause we're proposing here, and they're fairly straightforward.
Don't find them.
Too many notes.
I'd like to hear the words.
Okay. This is the clause that is currently on the table. It's a substantial change from our original position.
In other words, you back down a bit.
That's right. The employer's practice of contracting out shall not result in a reduction in hours worked by civic employees, the layoff of any civic employee, or the failure to recall an employee on layoff. And the final sentence is, any work contracted out shall be awarded to local contractors where possible. It's not a ban on contracting out.
But it's an option for your people, isn't it?
It gives some measure of security and stability.
Employers' practice of contracting out shall not result in a reduction in hours worked by civic employees, or the layoff of any civic employees, or the failure to recall an employee. That's a ban on contracting out, isn't it? Because if I'm going to contract something out, I do it to reduce my workload, my labor staff.
Not all employers in the province use contracting out in that fashion. Some employers contract out a new job.
And has this syndrome been repeated in all of these places after Penticton?
Not to the same degree.
But enough for the Okanagan Main Line to lock out everyone there except Penticton who's on strike.
Well, obviously the employers think that it's something they want to undertake.
How long can they go like this? They obviously are managing to do civic business with supervisory and management personnel.
Well, if you talk to the people who've been deprived library services, recreational services, People are trying to get ditches repaired before the winter rains come and their basements get flooded. It's a question. We say that the quality of service in those communities is drastically reduced.
How much strike pay are you paying?
$250 a week.
Big stuff.
Yes.
And how long can you keep up paying $250 a week?
As long as necessary.
Because from your national C.U.P.E organization?
No, they have provided us bridging funds, but it's the C.U.P.E members in British Columbia who have voted. Right now, over 100 locals have voted.
You've got 30,000 members, I'd forgotten that.
That's right.
And $10 a week is $300,000.
That's
What's the
right.
levy on your members? I see the Burnaby workers were complaining about the levy.
Each local has been assessed an increase per capita of 2.5% per week, or 1 hour's pay per week per member in the local who works more than 15 hours a week.
Any talks to settle this strike?
We're
lockout?
We're talking to every level of government. We're talking to the politicians in the communities. Our members are, approaching the individual aldermen.
There are
mayors.
no face-to-face talks?
No.
And Van der Zan went up to try to get the party together, and with the best will in the world couldn't succeed.
Yeah, the employer said that they would talk if there were no preconditions, and then made a precondition that the job security was not for discussion.
So contracting out ipso facto was not for discussion?
According to the employer.
Well, it's not quite as dramatically obvious as the IWA strike, but it must be causing a lot of hardship to your members, if nobody else. $250 a week strike pay, that's the highest strike pay I've ever heard of.
We base that partially on the fact that if you look at UIC today, for most of our members, it'd be $255 a week, using the figures from UI. And we
Okay,
felt
first time I've ever had Mike Dumler, president in British Columbia of C.U.P.E. He's going to stay here in case there are some phone calls from these parts of town, and I'll fill up with a free-for-all if I have to. Or we'll talk about labor disputes after the break. Two points I must make. If the Okanagan Mainline Association want to supply a spokesman for their side of the dispute, I'll be delighted to have them on the air. Secondly, the mention of the mayor of Penticton, and whose son-in-law is alleged to have got the cemetery contract. That was Ivan Mesmer, now a social credit MLA, and I am reliably told that when this matter was under discussion, the mayor, Mr. Mesmer, did not take any part in the discussion and left the room at the time, and therefore claims no influence in the matter. Next, Kelowna, go ahead, please.
Yes, I just want to tell this fellow sitting beside you there that my husband is in a union. And if there is any such thing as job security with unions, buddy, you are wrong. There is no such thing as job security today, yesterday, tomorrow. The company that he works for could go bankrupt anytime. You know why? Because people like you in the places that you are and that you work get far too much money, and you're putting BC out of business.
Fair enough, there's a straight statement to you, and it is a fact that in the halcyon days until recently, public service workers had more security than those in private industry.
And we also make less money. She raised the issue of money. Our members generally accept a lower wage than the union rate in the industrial sector in exchange for some degree of job security.
Go ahead from, just a minute, go ahead from Kamloops.
Yes, your guest there has made two glaring omissions. The bid in Penticton was put out under a proper bid system. It wasn't given to the premier, or at least to the mayor's son-in-law. And secondly, he forgot to tell you that the bid was $100,000 less than what C.U.P.E could do it for. In other words, it was saving the taxpayers of that city $100,000.
Is he correct?
The second thing that I should...
No, let's get that one first. Is he correct?
If our member was making $100,000 a year, he'd have been the highest paid C.U.P.E member in Canada, or the highest paid...
Well, obviously it was more than that.
Yeah, I don't know where he got $100,000. I don't know what you consider correct bid, because C.U.P.E wasn't in a bidding process. We had a member there working.
But it's, what is
no, but they costed it out.
Who costed it out?
Now,
the
the
mayor?
second thing is that I think that your gentleman should be honest with us. The reason that all the unions are going for job security is that they need numbers in their unions to maintain a certain level of service for their members. It's got nothing to do with how many are working or how many aren't working, except they want bucks in the union pot.
True or false?
False.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hello, Jack.
Yep.
How are you?
Oh, fair to poor, but carry on.
Good, good. I'm a small businessman, and I'd like to tell something to the fellow sitting next to you. As a small businessman, most of us don't have any job security. Why should you have job security? And another thing I'd like to point out, as a small businessman, I have to be extremely competitive in my business. Why shouldn't labor, especially unionized labor, should be competitive? Why should you guys be able to blacklist and blackmail the people of this province and get away with it? Who the hell do you think you are? Just because they are not a union member, you become a second-class citizen?
You made your point.
What's going on here?
Okay, I'd like to respond.
That's an anguish scream from a small businessman who has no protection except his wit and his competitive spirit.
He's got the protection, and in most small businesses in this province were built by IWA, workers' money, C.U.P.E workers' money. His job security depends on a stable economy and a stable...
Go and blacklist and blackmail us all the time. But, you know, when you think big business is a place that is just a black hole, you can drain money from it, you don't understand. If business is not profitable, you're going to be out of work. You're going to be out of business. And
you made your point, but you won't concede his point.
No, that his job security comes, he sure takes our members' money. He doesn't complain if we get a raise and buy a new car. He'll sell it to his woman.
Yeah, you're overpaid. You people are overpaid, underworked. That's why business doesn't come to this province.
Fair enough, sir. There's a lot of thinking about that.
I would be interested in what his business is.
I don't want to get into the whole capitalist union battle, but I'm prepared to tackle it if it comes up. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
If the the C.U.P.E productivity was up to par, then they wouldn't have to contract the work out. But since you get 2 or 3 guys holding one flag on a job, of course it's going to be cheaper to contract it out. So, of course, contract it out.
He says 2 or 3 guys holding a flag.
I've gone by city workers working on the side of a road and seen 5 of them standing around.
Okay, I'd like to respond as a municipal worker in the city of Nanaimo. I can't tell my supervisor, my boss, my manager that is paid by the taxpayers how many guys to send on a job. If he tells me to go with 3 guys and it takes 1 guy to do the job, all I can do is say, I don't think it takes 3 of us to do it. But he makes that decision. He's paid to make it, and no one advocates contracting out these management jobs. And they're the ones who are making the decisions that apparently a lot of people complain about.
You say there is some overstaffing in municipal work.
I would say that there isn't always efficient use of the manpower, but it's a decision of the mayors and councils to direct management.
Go ahead, please.
Hello. I have 2 questions for Mr. Mike Dumler. The first one being, I would like to know what incentive he has for the part-time people up there that are out on strike and are earning $250 to go back to work.
Just a minute, your part-timers get $250 as well?
No, they generally pick
Oh, that's not true, because I am a union worker, and I know where they stand. Our union, when we were offered to go out on strike, our part-time workers were offered $250 per week to go out on strike. So what incentive is there for them to go back to work?
Are you a member of C.U.P.E?
Yes, I am.
Every complaint, any names that have been forwarded to us, any local in the Okanagan that's been pointed out to us, we've gone in, the Secretary-Treasurer has checked to ensure that, in fact, people who work less than full-time are picketing less than full-time and are being paid pro-rated on the $250. But their incentive to go back to work is these people care about the quality of services in their community. And I say the moment the employer puts a reasonable job security proposal on the table or agrees to ours, which I think is quite reasonable, the vote will show
Okay, I have a second
they're willing to go back to work.
You're a C.U.P.E member.
Yes, I am. I have a second question for you. That being, you said that we got paid, or we had so much deducted from our paychecks being 1 hour per week. Is that not true?
No, I said the assessment, the increase in per capita to the division is based on 1 hour. Each local has its own bylaws and passes whichever motions. It works out to 2.5% is what most locals have adopted.
Just a minute, are you phoning locally or are you phoning from the interior?
I'm phoning from the Lower Mainland.
Yeah, but you're involved in one of these strikes, are you?
I was. Our union was going to go out on strike, and they didn't.
They didn't. Okay, she raises an interesting point, but we haven't got time to go into it. Mike, at least I've got the C.U.P.E side of the story of this protracted dispute from which somebody must be suffering, which had been on since July, end of June.
End of June.
With how many? 1,100 people out of work?
1,200 in the Okanagan and 140 in Powell River.
My thanks to Mike Dumler. It looks like a hot, long winter on the contracting out issue and all labour negotiations, including the IWA, and I shall be back after the break. Preempted by a football game tomorrow. At least it's not baseball. I can follow football. Monday I'm going to talk to Bob Meehan, a drug expert from the States. He was the guy who treated Carol Burnett's daughter, which should make him interesting if, you know, nothing else. But drugs are still a problem. So see you Monday, 5 p.m. precisely. Stay tuned for Tony.